I'm talking to Marcus Roberts, composer, pianist, band leader, educator, jazz musician, and just one of my all-time favorite musicians and people. Records out since the 89, is that when Truth Is Spoken Here came out? Late 80s, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So you've been a recording artist for over 30 years now, man.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Oh my goodness.
It adds up.
It does.
Well, we're going to have a treat because we get to rewatch the show that you did with the trio here back when you were the artist in residence in 2016, I think it was. And it's really something. And I think the trio, if we just start talking, let's talk about the present, and then we'll work our way back and around. That trio's been together such a long time. Like Rodney's the new guy, and he's been there 10 years, right? Rodney Jordan.
Yeah, Pete.
Whitney's been with you 20 years plus, or about like something like that?
25 years, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's pretty unbelievable, really, because bands just don't stay together that long, typically.
No, not even small groups. That's kind of a record. I can't think of long-running trios that hang together that long.
Right, yeah.
You're playing each other, right? How do you keep it kind of fresh up there when you play together? Like, how's it still new when you guys have been playing together so long and you know each other's nuances so well?
Well, I think one key to people wanting to play together is they have to feel that there's still a lot that they want to accomplish together, a lot that they want to do. The other component is making sure as a band leader that you're putting people in musical situations where they can showcase their talent and their beliefs about art, which will certainly intersect with you, but they will have their own views that they want to express. So if you can figure out a way to do that, then I think folks will have more of a reason to continue to play together.
And you figured that out, you three?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, I always, well, part of it is like, of course, I've known Jason since he was very young, 8, 9, 10 years old.
Right.
And Rodney used to come to our gigs or be around anytime I came to Florida State to teach. You know, he was there. Anytime the trio was there, he was always hanging out with Roland Guerin, who was my first bassist in the trio. So we've all maintained a close friendship and relationship through everything. Rodney and Roland still get along really well. I mean, we all believe in the same thing. So it was very easy when Rodney came aboard, to get him going with what we're doing, because he already knew what it was. He already believed in it. He has wanted to do that for a long time. And he's such a consummate perfectionist, as is Jason. And they balance each other very well. There's something about the way that they communicate as musicians and as men that's just, it's just great to see it. They're a team.
Yeah, the whole trio balances so well. I remember years ago you were trying to explain something like that to someone like me, which has got to be hard because I'm not a musician. I can't talk on certain levels, but you were talking about the idea of it being almost leaderless, in that anybody could feel free to step forward at any moment, and that'd be cool, right? Like the music could be taken a different way. Is that still kind of the concept? Is that right?
Oh yeah. You want the control to happen spontaneously through the music. You don't want it to be a situation where, as a leader, you got everybody on lockdown. You can only do this or only do that in this situation. Then you're kind of back to just having backup people. I don't like that. I never liked it. And so I have a firm belief that Jason often refers to it as letting the music take over. And a lot of people just can't really do that. They want to take over the music, which just limits where things can go. And it's important to remember that being an improvised musician, like when you improvise, that's a subconscious activity. You're making decisions so quick, you don't have time to consciously consider every option. So you really have to respond to the musical situation in a way that puts you out there in the same way that basketball players who are trying to make a 3-point last second shot at the buzzer, right? They don't really have time to think that much about it. They got to make the decision, and they got to
right. That's what practice is for.
Exactly. Yeah, practicing, that's a conscious activity. Now you are thinking of every detail, every option, and you're working on all of these fundamentals. But in a performance situation, you are dealing with expression and communication, and ultimately, if it's really successful, to put you and the audience in a state of communion with each other.
Right. As opposed to them just sitting and watching, there's actual vibe coming back and forth, right?
Exactly.
Well, you're excellent at that. You feel that in this show that we're going to watch. It's quite amazing how you had that both shows in that Flynn space just wrapped around your finger. Everybody was like cheering you on at every possible moment. That's what I love about that space. Like you can feel it's a dialogue between the artist and the audience. Like it's such a tight space. You couldn't possibly phone it in, or you would definitely get called out on it.
Right. No, that was one of our best performances. We felt very connected with the people right away. And sometimes you just know when a performance starts that, this one's going to be really good. This one's starting off how we want it to. And it was just like that the whole night. It was a great evening. We had a blast.
That's great. You have some nights where, like, even the three of you, you're all great improvisers, you're all great players, where it just isn't happening on that level. Like they're
sure. I mean, there are never guarantees with music. Sometimes it could be, you just drove for 8 hours and you're exhausted and you couldn't find a good restaurant before the show, and for whatever reason you just don't feel as connected with the people. We do try though to make sure that we get connected, usually during like a sound check if we haven't played together in a while. If the music isn't quite popping the way we wanted to, I mean, we take time and reconnect, and we always go back to fundamentals. Are we playing too loud? Are we not leaving enough room so that each musician can express what they're thinking or feeling? Is the arrangement crystal clear? There are all kinds of things that you can do to protect yourself from those situations, because I don't think it's fair or right to deny people who pay money to come hear you play to be able to just say to them, well, for some reason for you guys, we couldn't quite do it. That's
Good
not
night.
acceptable to me.
I read a Sonny Rollins interview recently. It was the same kind of thing. He's like, some nights, I won't try to imitate his amazing voice. I love his voice. But he was saying, some nights you don't feel it, but you're a pro. So you get out there and for the people who paid the money, you put on the show. And if you're a pro, you always have a certain level you hit. And people will always tell you it's great. And you'll know inside, well, I could have done better. I played better last night, but.
Right. Yeah, no, he's a legendary, just a genius and an icon beyond icons, of course. But he's right. But yeah, you have to always be pushing for that top shelf performance. You have to. It almost has to be, like I say, something that you just refuse to accept anything less than that. And usually, you'll get to it. I'm just fortunate that these guys are so talented and such monster players that even when we are not having a great night, it's still a good night.
That's very true. That's very true. Jason's also one of the most visual drummers to play. He just looks so cool up there, man. He's just got that the head going out like the world's, cool. He's just. I remember we played. You guys played a gig for me in Brevard, North Carolina, over in that hall in that small town, 700 people, outside of Asheville, and you guys went and played the high school, and there was a. I'm always touch and go on that. Are these high school kids that don't have any exposure to jazz going to respond to it? And of course, it took them 2 or 3 songs to get into it. Then they did, and what got them into it was a drum solo. Jason just went down on the drums, and like everybody had to go, that guy can play the drums, man. And from then on, it just cascaded forward. By the end, everybody's on their feet and everybody's screaming. It was that great process of like spending 2 or 3 songs almost to bait the hook, and then you reeled them in. By the end, it was like the house was coming down. It was really quite fabulous.
Right. Well, his playing is always so clear Even as a kid, you know, if you heard him play, there was never a question as to what he was playing. Like you could hear every drum, every cymbal, every articulation was smooth and clear. And he just built on that. So when Jason takes a drum solo, it's not just somebody sort of randomly playing with no formalized structure or thematic conception. With him, he makes it real easy for you to understand, this is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like a great speaker who reminds you every 4 minutes of the speech, this is why I'm talking to y'all. You know, we need that $2 million, y'all. We got to raise that money. You know what I mean? So
I do. I've heard those people before, sure.
Oh yeah,
I'm not one of them.
Well, no, well, you know.
What I love
to
about
people.
When you guys improvise too, another thing I love is, I mean, everybody's improvisations are obviously from a musician's point of view, they're incredible, but they're also accessible to the audience. So there's not a lot of, it's not a lot of mathematical abstraction that goes on in terms of what I'm hearing. You know, it's like, it almost goes back to like the whole idea of Louis Armstrong improvising melodically, right? So like he's doing this genius stuff that I could never, ever really conceive of, but I'm also tapping my toes and like moving around to it. And I love how you guys do these insane collective improvisations that are also totally accessible and with almost melodic at their core. And my other favorite thing you guys do is just the way you play with time. That's something you've done since the beginning, right? You just love to
oh my God, yeah,
stretch time around and do all that. Where did that first come from? That whole idea of like moving time around?
I was really doing it even in college. I had tunes that that did some of that, but where I really learned it, I think the person who influenced me the most and taught me the most about it was Jeff Tane Watts when I worked with him. You know, in Wynton Marsalis's quartet, we had a quartet in the mid '80s, and Tane was always doing this stuff, and so we would just kind of hook up rhythmic orchestrations where we would be always manipulating or playing with two tempos against each other that were mathematically related. And he was such a genius at that stuff. So I started trying to do that stuff like with my left hand on the piano. Like if I played solo or even in a band situation, we would do that. And I think that's where a lot of that came from for me. Awesome. And that's why I love playing with Jason, because he kind of continued to build on what Jeff Watts had laid out in terms of one of his conceptual passions is that the manipulation of time, the investigation of different time relationships and tempo relationships. And again, playing thematically inside of all that, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's a lot to pile on. That's a big sandwich.
It's ridiculous. And then if that's not enough, to be able to insert his dialogue with a drummer's style inside of all that, so he can play like a New Orleans groove, like in Five, or you know what I mean, or he can play like an Art Blakey type of thing, but you know, have it be like at a slower tempo than the actual song in one hand, but then the other hand he's at the tempo with us. I mean,
that's so cool.
Goes on and on. Yeah.
Was that Robert Hurst in that band? Who else was in that quartet with Wynton?
Yeah, Jeff Tane Watts and Bob Hurst. Yeah.
You and Wynton.
Yeah, two fantastic. Yeah.
You were in that band for a few years, right?
Yeah. Well, that band, we, you know, the funny thing is we did our first gig in June of 1985, so almost 35 years ago. My goodness.
Were you 21 years old at the time?
Yeah. And Bob Hurst, he came and joined the band in August of that year.
Wow.
And so, and then we recorded J-Mood in December. And I guess it came out in '86. So, I was there with those guys until Todd Williams came in 1987. And then we got Hurl and Riley in '88. We were still a quintet. You know, I think his first gig was in Australia. And then Wes Anderson joined the band that year. And then Wycliffe joined in '89. So
no slouches there.
No, I mean,
I've always been curious. So like you're a young man and you leave like one of the cushiest gigs in jazz, right? You're like the Wynton Marsalis's piano player, right? And
Oh yeah, yeah.
at
No,
age
it
25,
was,
26, you're like, no, I'm going to go be a leader. Like, A, what gave you the confidence? I mean, you're a great player, obviously. It's a mental thing as much as a playing thing to be able to step out on your own lead. And what was the timing about that? What made you think I got my own thing I want to say that I can't say in this band?
I just think it was a natural occurrence. I think what I always told myself was if I ever got to the point where I felt like I had any level of resentment about the music we were playing or what I was specifically doing, it was time to leave. And I wouldn't say it was anything as strong as resentment, but I did have, once I signed with RCA, like they want you to tour,
Right.
And so I had to figure out a way to, to kind of get my career kind of moving in that direction. And I still was very involved with the septet even after I officially left for a long time. So it's just one of those things that naturally occurred at that time. But I had a blast while I was there, learned a lot about how to lead a group, how to do records, things like that.
You guys are certainly still friends. He brings your name up every time he comes to Vermont. And you guys have played together on occasion since then, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, sure. And ultimately, I guess I've always felt a responsibility to mentor young people and to teach them. And I just felt like, well, if there's more than one band, that's got to be in the end overall better for the music, right? And so that was sort of the philosophy as well.
I tell anybody that wants to hear about those times that I would see you in whatever configuration at Dooley's back in Tallahassee. Come and break the music out that you've been woodshedding before you took it out to the rest of the world. And I'll get to hear it in that Australian theme bar in the Ramada Inn. Right? It just still seems unreal to me. The incredible level of music that I saw in that room.
Well, it's pretty incredible because again, that was another great room somehow, and I don't know how that was possible because it was just a hotel bar. I mean,
There were kangaroos in it, man. It was a weird spot. But it just exploded out of there. The things that I saw there, I've written them all down somewhere. Like I saw at least half a dozen different, like wildly different configurations, right? Like solo. I think you did a bunch of duos one night. I think a Serenity Approaches kind of duos. And the early Deep in the Shed stuff.
We did
Swinging the Blues was
in
there.
Yeah, Gershwin for Lovers, we did that there.
Gershwin for Lovers. Recorded there some of that night. Right?
Yeah, I did.
And that was with Riley, wasn't that? Was with her, with Riley and Veal.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a good one. And that was your first trio record, right? That was a surprise because
it was.
You've been almost like studiously staying away from the trio for the first 5 or 6 years that you were a leader. It seemed like. What made you?
Well, I didn't really know what I wanted it to be. And even when I did Gershwin for Lovers with them, I didn't really know what I wanted it to be. But when I hired Jason, that's when it became clear what I wanted to do. When I got him and Roland, then, and that's the thing, you are limited by the musicians that you have. I mean, that's what dictates what you can do.
That's true.
And so when I got the two of them, and that's when it became clear how I could move the music forward in the ways that I felt comfortable, pushing for in terms of things that I felt the jazz trio could be that I hadn't heard anybody else do,
Right. And obviously you encountered Jason by being in Witten's band, right? Is that how you'd meet?
Right. Oh yeah. He came to Europe in 1987. We had a tour of Europe and he came along and of course he was a kid, so it wasn't like we were hanging out or anything, but he sat in and played and I'd see him from time to time. And really when he was 14, I tried to record him. When I was doing all those duets, I did a session with him, but he just wasn't ready. So we didn't put that out.
14. Hard to blame him too much.
but he sounded great though,
Oh, I'm sure he did. I have no doubt.
And that's when I actually knew I wanted to hire him, but when I talked to his dad, he just said, well, you're going to have to wait till he finishes high school.
A fair request.
Which makes
late
sense.
Ellis Marcel, we just lost him fairly recently to this whole COVID.
Unfortunately.
Man.
Yeah, great man, great guy. I mean, we did a couple of years of 2 piano type duets, and he was always just so cool though, and he had that real deep official voice. he could have made money as a broadcaster or something.
Yeah, I met him, and he had one of those really. There's a number of voices you meet. I always thought McBride had one of those voices too. I thought, oh my god.
He does. Because it's like deep and resonant, and it's got a warmth to it. You know what I mean? So it just has that sound like everything's gonna be cool. We're here to, we're here to have a good time. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be okay.
I just always assumed like Thanksgiving at the Marsalis house would be madness with all those people and all those opinions flying over the table.
Oh, I'm sure it was, because they're all so busy. It's hard to know when they actually get together in a room all together, but I'm sure they do.
That's true. I think, Del Feo, I believe, produced a few of your records, did he not?
Yeah, we worked together on the first 6 records I put out, like all the records I did on RCA.
Right.
And he really did a fantastic job on those records. He had a whole belief in going back to more old school recording, like Truth is Spoken Here. I don't think he used any EQ at all.
Wow.
And he had some things with mic placement that him and Patrick Smith, his engineer, wanted to do. But just intelligent, smart, knows how the stuff is supposed to sound, obviously.
Truth is Spoken Here is it's your first record. Isn't that the last record Elvin Jones played on?
That I don't think so. I think he did some records.
He played some after that? But he's on that record. He's your drummer on that record, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
I must have been impressed. That's your debut record. You got Elvin Jones on there.
Oh man, yeah, I was terrified.
I can bet. Did he put you to ease?
I had him and Charlie Rouse. Well, not really. I mean, he just.
Yeah, why should he? It's not his job.
He just. Matter of fact, I remember when he first showed up at the studio. The first thing, because he was very intimidating. I don't know if you ever met him, but the first thing he says to me, he says, "What do you want me to do?" He says to me, and I was like 24 years old. I was like, "Well, sir, I don't know." He says, "Well, if you're gonna lead, then lead." He says to me.
Wow.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So it was kind of
no pressure.
Yeah, it was. And what he would do that was so impressive is that when it came to the tunes that I wanted him to play, he would come over by the piano and he would make me play the song like over and over and over. And then finally at a certain point, he'd go, "I got it. Let's do a take," And
just walk over and do it.
Yeah, well, yeah. And The Arrival, it was funny because the Arrival, which is the first tune on the record, we did the first take. And it was a great take. But it was like my first session. And I said, "Well, okay, that sounds fantastic. But can we do another one?" And he goes, "Why?" and then he said, "You can't recapture what that was." He says, "All you can do is a different version of it. That's all you can do."
Wow.
And he was right. That first take is what ended up being on the record too. So.
But you did another take at that point. At that point, you're committed, right? You said we're going to do.
Yeah, we did 2 more takes actually.
Okay.
But I had to remember. Well, he did play with John Coltrane, so he probably knows a little bit about it, right?
He probably knows a little bit about it.
But yeah, he just had such a deep commitment to playing the music. But I just thought it was interesting that the way he learned the music was away from the drum set, and that he internalized what the music meant and what it was and what he was going to do with it.
That's amazing.
And it was really an incredible experience. Getting a chance to work with him.
Like that. What are you working on now? What's your direction now? You got this forced layoff, which is this has got to be a nightmare for jazz musicians because summer is where the money gets made, right? You get to go out on tour,
my God, yeah,
play the jazz festivals, and summer's not happening. So
it's the first time probably since I was 9 or 10 where I didn't know when my next concert was going to be.
Yeah, wow.
I think for those of us who rely on the public to work or there being an audience, the athletes and the musicians and the people who do live theater and everything. I mean, we're just, frankly, it's not a good space because we just don't know when we're going to be able to get back in front of people. I will say this, you do have a deeper appreciation and a lot more gratitude for what you're able to do. And how it is that it is really about the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Without the people, there are no concerts. Without the people, so it puts you, I think, in touch with the people in a deeper way. Like when we finally do get a chance to play for people, I think all of us, the public as well as ourselves, are going to have a deeper appreciation for each other.
And I think from the audience point of view, we'll have a deeper appreciation for the artist. Like I think it's possible that it can deepen that conversation. There's no more taking it for granted. Like on a
That's right.
pre-COVID night in Burlington, you go out any night of the week and have 5 options of stuff to see and hear. And
Right.
when you have nothing for months, you're like, I should really listen more intently and enjoy where I am instead of just being there. I should actually take advantage of those moments. So I'm looking forward to getting back to it as well.
Oh yeah. We have to. We have to social distance. We have to be mindful that just because you can't see the virus doesn't mean it isn't out here. It is.
Right.
So in the meantime, I'm just, trying to think about next steps, different projects, and how to continue to motivate the young folks in my bigger group, the modern jazz generation, to keep them motivated. And for them, they haven't had the opportunities to play that I've had. So I'm hoping that we'll continue to be able to create those opportunities for them. And also the young people who we would like to be more involved in jazz music as music that they can add to their existing portfolio of musical taste.
Yeah.
We want to encourage them. And I think just as a culture in jazz, we need to do more music that appeals to young people, or find a better way to communicate with them as opposed to sort of forcing them to like what we like.
Or not, this is the crazy thing. Where do people get exposed to it? Where do you hear it? It's not taught anywhere. It's not a part of your platter now. I mean, young people today basically can hear anything ever recorded at any time, right? But that's overwhelming. True. Like, who sits and thinks, well, I want to hear, James P. Johnson in 1928. Nobody thinks that. You have to know what you're looking for still, even though everything's
unfortunately, out there. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of, music is a social activity. I mean, a lot of times it's more like your friend calls you up and says, oh, have you heard this record or that song or that song? And I think, unfortunately, just because it's sitting on YouTube, if there's no social interaction with it, or if it's not part of the group of people that you socialize with, chances are you're not going to just randomly decide to type in Booker Little, right? I mean, you're not going to do it. So I think that we have to educate the young people, especially, about what the options are. And I think we've got to do a better job of using technology to teach them about it and teach them what's out here and where they can find it.
I think that's true. I think it's even true. Let's feel like an artist like Coltrane. I think people think, oh, I should listen to Coltrane. So they go buy Ascension and they're like, oh, wow, this is way too much for me. No, Coltrane,
right.
Coltrane.
Right. Yeah, they don't know that most of his records are very easy to hear and listen to. And the wonderful record he did with Duke Ellington.
Oh my God, that's such a good
is a fantastic start if you haven't heard jazz. And you know what I mean? It's right up there with Kind of Blue for me. So
that really is a beautiful one. And it's on that beautiful Impulse label, right? Doing all Ellington songs, right? I love that. I love whenever you do a session with Ellington, you do Ellington songs.
Well, there you go. Nothing wrong with that.
I've got a suggestion. How about another one of mine? Yeah, absolutely. Right. Let's do that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I know that one.
Oh, yeah.
Got your piano in front of you? Is that the big piano that you had brought in?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's it.
What'd you have before?
Well, I still got my upright is over. It's next to my office, so it's still here. But man, this thing it sounds fantastic.
You of all people cannot be kept in a house for months with an upright. That's not going to work.
No. Yeah, that wasn't going to work. Yeah, that's the one thing that I'm just real happy about that I was able to get it over here. Start working really digging deeper into music with it. So That's been great.
So you practice it a lot. You're working at it. You're getting. I mean, I guess one of the things that was a flip question, but what I'm thinking about is when I saw you first play at Dooley's Alone with Three Giants, right? You played by yourself on a stage. You're my age. I think we're within a month of each other in the age.
Right, I think you're right.
And you played that music by Jelly Roll Morton, Thelonious Monk, and Duke Ellington by yourself, and it was just so mind-blowing. And I remember at the time thinking, what does a guy like that do when he's so good this young? Like, do you get better? And you've answered that question over these 30, but you've actually gotten better. Like, you do more amazing stuff now than you did then. I just wonder, at a certain point, how do you keep pushing yourself forward and not fall back on the things you can already do?
Well, the key thing is stay in touch with the greatest artists that played the music that you play. So, you know, when I listen to Duke Ellington or Monk, you know, I mean, I love the way McCoy Tyner played in Coltrane's band. The harmonic concept of Herbie Hancock and the rhythmic and harmonic concept of Chick Corea, on and on. Ahmad Jamal, who I love dearly. Those people keep you inspired because there's a lot that they figured out that I still don't understand and I want to understand. And then, you know, there are classical pianists like, you know, Martha Argerich and, you know, Richter, Sviatoslav Richter and Emil Gilels that, you know, the sound they get, Horowitz, who's like a magician, right? Like the stuff that he plays is just, he's like Charlie Parker. You just can't believe somebody physically did it, what they're doing. So those are the ways that I stay able to think of other things to do, you know, developing my left hand more, the interaction between the two hands so that they're more textured, deeper understandings of different positions of the sustain pedal that I can use, figuring out, you know, other ways to voice things, to use the extreme registers of the piano. I mean, on and on and on. I mean, there's a lot still left to do. And then ultimately figuring out a way to continue to integrate styles that seemingly are unrelated, but are. So even, well, like, you know, I grew up playing in church and I grew up playing pop music as a kid. So figuring out how all those styles can be integrated into, let's say, Ahmad Jamal's approach to the piano, or finding a way that the boogie woogie blues playing that I like and that I've spent some time studying can actually integrate with some of the stuff that was going on in the mid 60s. Again, you wouldn't think that those two things could occur. And of course, the biggest question is how to incorporate it into what's going on right now. Like, how do we use it now? Okay. And so my philosophy of playing says that we're not trying to imitate anybody because you can't, right? I mean, you'd have to live their life to really imitate them.
Yeah, it's a dead end.
But what you can do is you can build your personality by figuring out the part of their style and personality that's part of you already. And their information just helps you to bring it out. So this is essentially what I'm interested in, is to take the 100 years that we have of piano and jazz in general and integrate it into a relevant modern approach to the piano and to jazz that people can hear and enjoy. And again, pass that same approach to the people, which is to say that any part of jazz that speaks to you represents you. So people don't have to feel like they gotta like this person or like that person. I mean, it's a personal thing, but my job is to expose people to what the options are. And I certainly celebrate their right to listen to the jazz music that moves them.
That's great. Chick Corea is a great example. He was our last jazz show before we shut down. We had the Chick Corea trio come through, and I think he's 80, and he's just a badass.
Well, he's Well, he's something else. I spoke with him not too long ago, man. He's somebody who's trying to figure out what's the next step. What are we getting ready to do? This is what people who are truly creative and who have real imagination are always asking themselves. They're saying, what's next?
Yeah, true.
Okay.
That's true.
And who wants to go? Who's interested in doing it? Let's go.
Oh, I agree. It's not what you did before or what you're doing now. It's definitely what's next that moves everybody forward, especially at this time of almost pure stasis. We're all basically stuck in our homes, stuck not doing what we've done before. You got to find a way to keep moving forward somehow. It's a challenge.
Well, we're going through a forced transition.
Yeah.
It's not a question of are we going to change? The question is, are we going to change being dragged and screamed into it? Or are we going to embrace it? Which, for the record, that's what jazz music teaches you how to do. It's an improvised music. It's a music that requires you to make very complicated decisions under pressure spontaneously. You don't get to think about it that much. And so we're trained actually to understand how to solve problems without a whole lot of time to do it. And so there's a lot in jazz that I think could be very helpful for people at a time like now, because this is a time where people are improvising. I mean, they're having to figure out, how are they going to teach? What are they going to do? They're young people, they're kids, or what are they doing for the summer? I mean, so everybody's having to figure out, next steps. When 4 months ago, nobody was thinking about it at all. And so I think that as we come out of this, I do believe jazz music could be a relevant source that folks can use, even if it's just to enjoy, but also if you dig a little deeper and you start to understand a little bit of how the music is created and what we do, there's a lot of it that's applicable to American life and a lot of the issues that we all face every day.
And the history of America, it's all wrapped up in there for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I was raised a rock and roll kid, and I went over to jazz just because the stories were so much more interesting. I'm more of a story-driven person. The personalities to me were more fascinating. Like one more rock star and heroine's about the most boring thing in the world, right? But like the crazy range of stories, especially the early days of jazz, were just so remarkable to me. This Louis Armstrong story is like there's almost no equivalent, right? And yet it's this everyman story, right? It's hard to believe that it actually occurred. Right.
Yeah.
If it hadn't happened, we'd had to make it up, right? Because it's just too
right. Well,
it's just too.
It's a music full of self-created people who supported each other.
Yeah.
They didn't have a lot of options. They had to create them.
Yeah.
And also, the public was being healed by what they were doing as well. So there was a real symbiosis between the audience and the people. And there was a certain point in jazz history where if you weren't playing stuff that people wanted to hear, they let you know.
Yeah, I missed those days a little bit.
So it wasn't like people weren't going to tell you,
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't go to these places and be fooling around. And even if you got sick, like if you were in a big band, like Duke's band or Basie's band or something, you got sick and somebody took your place, you might not get your chair back. I mean, it was very competitive.
A little cutthroat.
Yeah. It's kind of like the NFL, you hurt your knee and Adrian Peterson steps in like, oh, well.
Yeah, that's right. So is FSU going to be back in person in the fall, When you teach, that's where you teach. I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's where I teach. I don't know. I got to find out. I honestly don't know. I think there's a chance that that what they'll do is try to do some social distancing things where maybe part of the class meets on Monday and another, that seems to be one solution that folks have come up with, but I'm not sure.
Were you Zoom teaching a lot this semester?
Oh yeah.
How does that work?
Essentially you either can do like a one-on-one type lesson. It's difficult for you to have, you could have a group of people if they're in the same room, they could all play.
Right.
But you can't have people who are in 3 different rooms play together because the latency is going to be too much. So there'll be lag time between what each person is playing. So mainly I'm going to probably be doing probably one-on-one private lessons, and probably maybe a couple of classes with a bunch of musicians where you just, demonstrate things, play things, and talk to them.
Okay. And you're going to get on the road as soon as you can? Go out and play some
As soon
shows?
as soon as it's safe.
That's what I mean. That's when, as soon as you can.
Yeah,
As it's safe. That's what I mean. Of course.
yeah. Hopefully, I just don't know when that's going to be. I
don't either.
I just don't think we know enough about what's going to happen here to predict anything. But yes, certainly as soon as it's possible to play in front of people, I'll be there.
Be out there. Great.
Oh yeah.
Well, I certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. As always, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and it's always a pleasure to watch. I've watched this clip of the show of you and the trio probably 5-6 times since you did it. It's just it blew me away.
Well, thank you.
Great to have you guys as artists in residence that time. We spent almost the whole week.
Oh
here.
yeah, that was fun.
And after that, I think it was after that the big band came through, and you guys were in residence for a handful of days and did a whole bunch of stuff for us as well. So
yeah. No, no, it's been great, and you got a great program up there. All of you up there who are able to support the Flynn, do it. This guy, he's been in it as long as I've been in it, and all he wants to do is bring great diversified entertainment